The Moores were the kind of couple who drew eyes wherever they went. Every Sunday morning, neighbors waved as Claire and Ethan stepped out of their spotless white house, coffee cups in hand, matching smiles on their faces. To anyone watching, they were a portrait of devotion, his arm around her waist, her laugh soft and genuine, the kind of love people whispered about and envied. Claire had built this life carefully, every detail arranged like a photograph meant to be admired. She managed the home, the parties, the smiles. Ethan handled success, a thriving architecture firm, polite charm, and that easy warmth that made strangers trust him instantly. They fit together too perfectly. Still, perfection had its echoes. Sometimes, late at night, Claire would wake to the sound of silence too complete. She'd find Ethan sitting in the dark living room, eyes fixed on something invisible. "Couldn't sleep?" she'd whisper. He'd turn to her, smiling faintly. "Just thinking," he'd say, though his eyes didn't seem like they belonged to a man at peace. Their friends saw nothing wrong. Dinner parties were flawless. Laughter spilled easily between them. But behind that easy rhythm, Claire began to notice little things. The way Ethan's smile lingered a second too long in mirrors, how he watched her reflection in the glass doors rather than her actual face. Once when she asked why, he simply said, "Because reflections never lie." She laughed it off then, but the thought stayed with her. On a bright Saturday afternoon, while trimming roses in the backyard, she caught him inside through the window, standing motionless, staring at her reflection on the glass. Not at her, at it. When she turned to meet his gaze, he didn't move, didn't smile, just watched, expression unreadable. Later that night, she mentioned it playfully. "You were watching me through the window again." He chuckled, kissed her forehead, and said, "You're beautiful in sunlight." I couldn't help it. His tone was affectionate. But something inside her twisted, a quiet unease she couldn't name. She smiled back, pretending to believe it, unaware that this was the first crack in the glass, the first reflection that would one day shatter everything. The day began like any other celebration in the Moore household, curated to perfection. Claire spent hours arranging candles, straightening napkins, ensuring everything looked effortless. She wanted the evening to feel genuine, like love could still be polished until it gleamed. When Ethan walked in, the house erupted with surprise. Friends cheered, champagne flowed, and for a moment, Claire almost forgot the shadows she'd begun to notice. His arm wrapped around her, his voice warm and smooth as he thanked everyone. But when he leaned close to whisper, "You always outdo yourself," she sensed it, that faint, hollow tone beneath the charm. As the night wore on, laughter filled every corner. Ethan's phone buzzed once, twice. Claire ignored it at first. Then, as he stepped away to greet a colleague, the screen lit up again, the words sharp, unavoidable. "She doesn't know yet, does she?" The message glared up at her like an open wound. Her breath caught. Around her, the room blurred. Music, clinking glasses, laughter folding into white noise. Ethan returned, pocketing the phone before she could look twice. His smile was steady, but his eyes flickered, brief as lightning. Claire forced herself to laugh, to serve cake, to hold the performance together. She even toasted him. "To Ethan, the man who still surprises me." The irony tasted bitter on her tongue. When the guests left and silence settled over the living room, Ethan sank into the couch beside her. "You okay?" he asked. "Perfect," she said, the word cracking faintly as she spoke it. He smiled, that same practiced, reassuring smile, and kissed her cheek. Good, because tonight was perfect. But long after he fell asleep, Claire sat in the dark, staring at the faint glow of his phone charging on the nightstand. The message burned behind her eyes. She doesn't know yet, does she? And though she didn't know what it meant, she knew one thing for certain. Perfection had just been interrupted. The message from Ethan's phone had been gnawing at Claire for days. Every time he smiled, every time his phone buzzed, she felt the same icy pulse in her chest. By the end of the week, she couldn't take it anymore. She told Ethan she had errands to run and drove instead to a place she hadn't visited in years, Dr. Avery's office. The waiting room was smaller than she remembered. The same soft jazz played, the same scent of lavender, but everything felt colder now. When Dr. Avery appeared in the doorway, her familiar calm voice made Claire's throat tighten. "Claire," she said gently, "it's been a long time." They sat across from each other, the air thick with unsaid things. Claire spoke first, haltingly, carefully, about the message, about the silence in her marriage, about the feeling that something inside her home had turned against her. Dr. Avery listened, fingers folded under her chin, eyes sharp with quiet understanding. When Claire paused, the doctor hesitated. "You know," she began slowly, "Ethan came to see me once. Years ago," Claire blinked. "What? When?" "Before you stopped therapy. He said he wanted to understand you better. But the things he said," Dr. Avery's gaze drifted to the floor. "He told me there were parts of you he needed to fix. That he could, that he already had." Claire felt her stomach twist. "Fix?" Dr. Avery nodded slightly, voice lowering. "He didn't sound like a man seeking help, Claire. He sounded like someone rehearsing control." Silence fell heavy between them. Claire's pulse pounded in her ears as she stood to leave. Dr. Avery's final words followed her like a ghost. "You're not the first person he's made feel this way." Outside, the world seemed too bright. Claire gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened, the sentence looping through her mind. She thought she was losing her husband. Now, she wasn't sure she ever truly knew him. For days after visiting Dr. Avery, Claire couldn't look at Ethan the same way. Every smile felt rehearsed, every touch a test. The house that once felt warm now hummed with secrets, the kind that made walls listen. That's when she noticed the new lock on the basement door. It appeared suddenly, a sleek silver padlock gleaming where none had been before. When she asked, Ethan's response came too quickly. "Remodeling," he said, sliding his arm around her shoulders. "I want to surprise you, a surprise." The word left a bitter taste. At first, she tried to ignore it. But each day, the sound of power tools came and went, though the basement lights never flickered beneath the door. Once she caught the faint smell of bleach rising from the cracks. Sharp, chemical, unnatural. Ethan brushed it off. "Just cleaning supplies," he said, smiling too easily. Then came the storm. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rolling through the house like an angry heartbeat. Ethan had gone out for a late meeting, leaving her alone with the rhythmic drip from the ceiling and that locked door whispering temptation. Curiosity, or fear, finally won. She fetched the spare keyring from his desk drawer, her hands trembling. One key slid into the lock perfectly. When the latch clicked open, her stomach dropped. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of bleach and something metallic underneath. She descended slowly, each step groaning under her weight. Lightning flashed through the small window, illuminating the space in sharp bursts. Tools lined the shelves. A tarp covered something bulky in the corner. On the workbench lay scattered photographs, some of their wedding, others not. In one, a woman's face stared up, torn down the middle. Claire's half-still smiled, but beside it was another, unfamiliar, hauntingly similar. Then she saw it, a hammer, its handle smeared dark red. Resting beside the torn photo, her knees nearly buckled. Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, she felt the shape of a truth she wasn't ready to face. She backed away, heart pounding, and locked the door again before Ethan's car pulled into the driveway. That night, as he kissed her goodnight, her mind echoed with one question. Who was the other woman? Claire barely slept after finding the basement. Every sound made her flinch. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of floorboards, the low murmur of Ethan's voice on late calls he always took in another room. She told herself she'd imagined the photo, the hammer, the smell of bleach. But denial had limits. 3 days later, the news shattered what remained of her calm. Local authorities continue the search for Lila Hayes, the anchor said. Missing since last Thursday. Last seen near Willow Creek, Claire froze. On-screen flashed a picture. Young woman, blonde, soft-featured. The same sharp cheekbones, the same gray-green eyes, the same faint scar above the brow. Her reflection in the TV glass stared back, and for a moment she couldn't tell who was who. Ethan entered behind her, holding a mug of coffee. "What's that?" he asked casually. She didn't turn. "A missing person. She looks familiar." He glanced at the screen, then at her. "People see what they want to see," he said lightly, setting the mug down. But the tremor in his hand didn't match the tone. The next morning, 2 detectives knocked on their door, polite, professional, asking neighbors for information. Ethan handled it with perfect composure. His smile crisp, his voice calm. Claire watched from behind him, silent. When the officers left, he turned to her and said almost too calmly, "People disappear all the time. Don't let it get in your head." But it already had. That night, his late meeting ran long again. She waited by the window, heart pounding as headlights finally swept across the driveway near midnight. Ethan stepped out, jacket damp, face unreadable. When he noticed her watching, he smiled through the glass, the same steady smile that used to comfort her. Now it only terrified her. As he entered the house, she caught a faint scent clinging to his coat. Bleach and rain. Claire forced herself to breathe, to stay composed. Tomorrow, she decided, she would find out where he really went. By morning, Claire's decision hardened into something unshakable. The sleepless nights, the smell of bleach, the missing woman's face, they had all blurred into one unbearable truth. She couldn't pretend anymore. When Ethan came home that evening, she was waiting in the dimly lit living room. No dinner, no music, just silence and the steady tick of the clock between them. "We need to talk," she said quietly. He stopped in the doorway, eyes cautious. "About what?" "The woman on the news," Claire replied. "Lila Hayes, she looks like me. Too much like me. And you've been lying. About where you go, what's in that basement." "Claire," his voice cracked, sharp and pleading. "Stop." But she didn't. "Tell me the truth." He hesitated, then sank onto the couch, rubbing his face. "It's not what you think," he said. "I've been helping someone, a friend. She was in trouble and I couldn't tell you because you'd worry." "That's all? A friend?" she whispered. He nodded, eyes glistening. "She needed money. A place to hide for a few days. I didn't know it would turn into this." "I swear, Claire, I didn't do anything wrong." Tears welled in his eyes, or maybe he'd practiced them. His hand reached for hers, firm and trembling. "Please, you have to trust me." The words pierced her resolve. She wanted to believe him, to cling to the man she married, the life they built. For a brief, fragile moment, she did. He kissed her forehead, whispering, "Everything's fine now. You'll see." Later, as he showered, Claire gathered his jacket from the chair. Her fingers brushed against something in the pocket. Cool metal against her skin. She pulled it out slowly. A bracelet. Delicate silver, the name Lila engraved on the inner band. Her breath caught, the room spinning around her. From the bathroom, water ran steadily, masking the sound of her breaking heart. And for the first time, Claire realized the truth wasn't coming in words. It was waiting for her in the dark. The bracelet gleamed in Claire's palm long after the shower stopped. She tucked it back into Ethan's pocket before he returned, her pulse hammering against her ribs. He emerged in a towel, smiling as if nothing had changed. And for the first time she saw it, the stranger she'd married. That night, she lay awake beside him, eyes open to the dark ceiling, memories clawing their way to the surface. Lila Hayes, the name she had buried years ago under a new one. Under Claire. The past came flooding back like a wound she'd never truly healed. Her real name had been Clara Hayes. Lila was her younger sister, bright, impulsive, drawn to danger like a moth to flame. They grew up in a broken home, their mother long gone, their father a man who made cruelty look like discipline. At 18, Clara fled and changed everything. Her name, her address, her history. She built a life that didn't carry the weight of who she once was, until Ethan. He'd met her at a charity event, disarming and kind, promising safety she'd never known. For years, she convinced herself she was free. But now, staring at that bracelet, she saw the past folding back on itself. A perfect circle. She remembered Lila's voice from their last phone call, trembling but determined. "He's not who he says he is, Clara. Promise me you won't trust him." Back then, she'd hung up, convinced her sister was being dramatic, lost, jealous of her success, maybe even unstable. She'd blocked the number, trying to protect the peace she'd built. Now Lila was missing, and Ethan's lies had the same rhythm as that call. Claire pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, fighting a sob. If Ethan had found Lila, if he'd hurt her, this wasn't just betrayal. It was consequence. She rose quietly, careful not to wake him, and opened her drawer. Inside lay a faded photograph of two girls on a beach, one holding a seashell, the other smiling behind her. The ink had bled where tears once fell. Claire stared at it, whispering, "I'm sorry, Lila." Then she looked toward the basement door. She wasn't running anymore. The next morning, Claire moved through the house like a ghost, silent, watchful, waiting for her moment. Ethan left early for work, leaving behind his usual trail of charm and control. A note on the counter, "Love you." Back late. She read it twice, then tore it in half. Something inside her had shifted. The bracelet, the memories, Lila's warning, all pointed toward the same answer. The truth wasn't just buried in the basement. It was everywhere. She started with his office. Ethan kept it locked, but by now she knew where every key was hidden. The door creaked open into a space that smelled faintly of cologne and static electricity. Neat rows of files lined the wall. His desk was spotless, except for a small monitor blinking faintly beneath the surface. Claire pressed a key. The screen came to life. For a moment, she didn't understand what she was seeing. Then her breath stopped. Footage, dozens of folders labeled by date, filled the desktop. She clicked one. There she was, sitting in the kitchen, crying after their last argument. Another clip showed her asleep. Another, brushing her hair. Another, in her therapist's parking lot, talking to Dr. Avery. Every hour of her life recorded. Her hands trembled. "Oh my God," she whispered. He hadn't loved her. He had studied her. Each video was a piece of a puzzle she hadn't known existed. A project, a pattern, something clinical in its obsession. Every emotion, every breakdown documented. On one labeled Basement Week 3, she froze. Ethan stood before the camera, talking softly to someone unseen. "She's close," he said. "But not yet. She needs to believe it first." Claire's stomach turned. That's when she realized she wasn't the one being destroyed. She was the subject of his experiment, and if he wanted a reaction, he'd get one. She closed the laptop, exhaled slowly, and whispered, "Your turn to be watched, Ethan." From that moment, the plan began to take shape, patient, deliberate, and perfectly quiet. For 3 days, Claire planned her escape with the precision of a surgeon. Every movement was quiet, practiced. She packed essentials, documents, cash, a burner phone, hiding them beneath the false bottom of a suitcase. By night, she replayed Ethan's recordings in her head, each clip a reminder that she wasn't living in a marriage, but a cage. She waited for the perfect moment. Friday night, a storm was coming, just like the one when she'd first opened the basement door. The weather would hide the noise, the smoke, everything, but Ethan was always one step ahead. When she descended the stairs that night, her suitcase in hand, he was already waiting in the living room. The lights were low, his voice calm. "Going somewhere?" Her throat tightened. "I can't stay here anymore." He smiled faintly, the same controlled expression she'd once loved. "You were never supposed to find out," he said. "But maybe it's better this way. Maybe now you'll understand what I was trying to do." Claire's pulse raced. "You call spying love?" He stepped closer. "No, I call it control. Love is just the word people use when they're afraid to admit they need it." His hand caught her wrist, too tight, bruising. She fought back, nails clawing, suitcase crashing to the floor. A candle toppled from the table, flame spilling across the rug. Neither of them noticed at first. "Let me go," she screamed. "You'd ruin everything." He shouted back, dragging her toward the door. The fire spread fast, curtains igniting, smoke curling upward like breath from hell. Then turned, eyes wide as the blaze reflected in them. For one heartbeat, Claire saw the man she married, terrified and small. Then instinct took over. She pushed him back, hard. He stumbled, hit the floor, fire crawling closer. She hesitated, one final second of mercy hanging between them. Then she turned and ran. The explosion came as she reached the yard, heat searing her skin. Night torn open by light and sirens. When neighbors found her hours later, trembling and burned, she said only 2 words: self-defense. Inside, what was left of Ethan Moore was unrecognizable. By dawn, the Moore house was nothing more than a charred skeleton. Walls blackened, roof collapsed, smoke rising like a warning. Firefighters sifted through the wreckage while police cordoned off the street. Neighbors whispered about tragedy, about love turned violent. The woman who survived sat wrapped in a gray blanket, her face pale beneath the hospital lights. She gave her statement softly, voice shaking at the right moments, tears appearing on cue. "He tried to kill me," she murmured. "It was self-defense." Detective Rowan watched her closely, his expression unreadable. Something about her calmness didn't sit right. Survivors usually trembled, broke down, couldn't stop talking. This one chose her words carefully. Within days, the investigation deepened. The hammer found in the ruins carried 2 distinct sets of fingerprints, both Ethan's and hers. Financial records revealed joint accounts, but also secret transfers under her name. Thousands of dollars moved over months. Untraceable origins. Rowan's partner, Detective Vega, slid the reports across the desk. Either she knew what he was doing, Vega said, or she helped him do it. But the real twist came from the coroner's office. The victim's body, though burned beyond recognition, showed surgical evidence. Titanium plates along the jawline, subtle scars beneath the skin, facial reconstruction. Rowan frowned. "Why would Ethan Moore have that?" "He wouldn't," Vega replied quietly. "But his wife might." The words hung in the air like smoke. They pulled older files, medical histories, photos, and a buried record from years before. A missing woman named Clara Hayes, reported dead after a car crash, never identified. Her sister Lila had filed the report. Now, in the ashes of the Moore residence, the body bore Clara's reconstructed features. Rowan exhaled slowly. "Then who's the woman claiming to be Claire Moore?" Vega looked through the observation window at the survivor, her hands folded neatly in her lap, a faint smile forming on her lips. "Whoever she is," Vega said, "she's not who she says." And as the interrogation room door opened, the woman finally looked up, eyes cold. Voice steady. "Are we done here, Detective?" Detective Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Every detail about the survivor, her calmness, her phrasing, even the way she signed her name, felt too deliberate. When the DNA results finally arrived, the truth cracked the case wide open. The woman in the hospital bed wasn't Claire Moore at all. She was Lila Hayes. The real Claire, the woman everyone believed had survived the fire, was the one found dead in the ruins. But the face she wore hadn't been her own for years. Lila had undergone facial reconstruction, surgeons altering the contours of her face to match her sister's. Years of obsession, pain, and twisted love had led her to this. The perfect disguise hidden in plain sight. The detectives pieced it together through fragments, old medical records, a clinic in another state, a doctor now missing. Somewhere along the line, Lila had taken her sister's name, her life, her husband. Whether it was revenge or survival, no one could yet tell. When Rowan entered the interrogation room, Lila sat upright, eyes steady. "So," he said softly, placing the file on the table, "who are you, really?" Her lips curved faintly. "You already know," she whispered. "You just don't understand." He leaned forward. "You took her face, her name. You lived her life." Lila's gaze flickered, and for the first time, something raw broke through. "Claire took everything from me first. My childhood, my safety, my truth. Ethan just finished the job." Her voice cracked but steadied again. He thought he was in control. He thought he could break me, just like he broke her. But he never realized I'd already learned how to survive people like him. She paused, eyes glassy but fierce. "So I gave him what he wanted. I became her. And when he finally looked at me and couldn't tell the difference, I knew I'd won." Rowan exhaled, unsettled. "And the fire?" She looked past him toward the window, her reflection faint against the glass. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "you have to burn a lie to keep the truth alive." Outside, the world believed a grieving wife had survived her husband's madness. Inside, the truth sat smiling in silence. The room is stark. White walls, a single table, 2 metal chairs. A camera blinks red in the corner. Across from Lila sits Mara Keene, the investigative journalist who'd waited months for this moment. The story had captivated the nation. The Moore marriage murder. Everyone wanted answers. Only one person could give them. Lila's orange jumpsuit hangs loose on her thin frame. Her wrists are cuffed lightly to the table, but she sits with the poise of someone entirely in control. Mara clears her throat. "You've refused interviews for 6 months. Why now?" Lila's lips curl into a faint, almost amused smile. Because the story's already been written, I just want to make sure it ends the right way. Mara leans forward. Then tell me, who was Ethan Moore to you? Lila looks down, her voice low, steady. He was the man my sister married. The man who taught her how to disappear. When she died, I thought I could understand why she stayed, so I stepped into her life to find out. By becoming her? Mara presses, Lila nods. It wasn't about revenge. Not at first. It was about seeing what she saw, feeling what she felt. But Ethan, he didn't notice the difference. He never loved Claire. He loved the version of her he could control. So when I became her, I became everything he wanted, and then I burned it all down. The journalist hesitates. You mean the fire? Lila's eyes flick to the camera. We built the perfect marriage on lies, she says softly, and burned in it together. Silence stretches between them. The hum of the fluorescent lights fills the void. Do you regret it? Mara asks finally. Lila tilts her head, thoughtful. Regret is for people who still believe in innocence. I just believe in balance. The guards enter quietly, signaling the end of the session. Lila stands, her chains rattling faintly. As she's led away, the camera stays fixed on her face, calm, unflinching, her faint smile hovering between sorrow and triumph. When the footage airs months later, millions watch in silence, and for a brief, haunting moment, no one can tell whether they're looking at a monster or a survivor who finally won.